Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Tuesday talk. I have my friend Jessica who is joining me today, and I'll have Jessica introduce herself in just a moment. But for our live listeners, we love audience participation. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We love for you to ask questions. So if you want to type in a question as Jessica and I are visiting over the course of the next 30 minutes, please do so. And you can do so by clicking the Q&A button on your Zoom screen, most likely on the bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on how you have it set up. You don't see the Q&A button. There is a button that's a circle with three dots that says more. Click on that bad boy, and then the Q&A button will pop up. So you can type in a question. You can even click a little box that says anonymous if you don't want me to know your name. Completely up to you. But today I looked up the actual title of this webinar, and it's called Caregiver Best Practices. So if you could please have your questions pertain to caregiver best practices and all things caregivers, because we have an expert joining us today, and she's going to be full of information all about caregivers. So without further ado, Jessica, if you would please introduce yourself to our listeners and what you do here at Right at Home.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So my name is Jessica Schultz. I am the franchise director of people strategy. So my particular focus is on caregiver and office staff recruitment and engagement primarily. A little bit about my background. I have about 20 years of experience in HR. I worked for a major hospital here in Omaha, Nebraska for a lot of different functions I was in charge of. And then I've been in home care now for about almost 8 years. In franchising for almost 8 years, and then here at Right at Home for a little over 4 years. So excited to be here today.
Yes, and I'm excited you're here as well. So knowing that, I'm going to just jump right into it. So knowing that our audience are people who are interested in maybe joining the Right at Home system and moving forward with that next big step. So keeping in mind that that is our audience today. So it's a lot of people that may or may not have any home care experience, may or may not have any business ownership experience, franchise experience, you name it. But anyway, so knowing that it's brand new people that don't have any access to that yet, and hopefully will once they join Right at Home. But let's pretend that we're going to fast forward to right when a brand new owner joins the Right at Home system. So let's talk a little bit about what we do to help in those and support those franchise owners that are getting ready to hire that first office staff member and getting ready to hire those first few caregivers. And just to point out, some people, it's a frequently asked question that we get, like, okay, John, I'm getting ready to open my business, but do I get clients first and then hire caregivers, or do I hire some caregivers first and tell those caregivers, hey, I don't have any clients yet, but just stick with me, you're going to be my first, couple caregiver hires. So let's just talk about that first initial, like somebody who doesn't have any experience with this, maybe just walk through that initial support of, okay, so you're getting ready to hire those first caregivers. What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we do get that often. And that's exciting for new owners to come in and seeing, this whole process happen. So basically, we would like to say caregivers probably first because we can always get them training and what we like to call keeping them warm, right? So we want to keep them on the books. We want to keep them, working. We want to keep them getting paid. And that way you kind of have some training, ready and you're getting them prepared for that first client. And then you kind of go out and do clients, but we kind of want that to also simultaneously happen too. So that way there's not that big of a gap between caregiver waiting to be in with client, right? So we want it to happen fairly quickly, but definitely I would say caregiver comes before client.
Okay. So let's start with hiring caregivers. Where does a franchise owner start? Those first initial hires. Where do you even begin?
Yeah, so we actually have in our standards that you will be required to use an ATS. So an ATS is an applicant tracking system that you will actually use to push your jobs out on different job boards. And in those job boards is where caregivers will come and apply for the role. So during that process, new owners are encouraged to set up an ATS and figure out your workflows, your statuses, so that you can then move that caregiver through the process. quickly, because speed is the game, in making sure that that caregiver has everything that they need before they start in your office day one. So an ATS is very helpful. Setting up your jobs. We talk a lot about how to set up your jobs, get them ready. That way you are attracting some of the best high quality caregivers that are out there. So really
Okay, great segue into my next question, which is, so if that's the case, how does Right at Home help our franchise owners consistently attract those caregivers in what many describe as a very competitive labor market?
Yeah, so a couple of things is, definitely the search engine optimization is really key in
Hmm.
making sure that you are utilizing your job title throughout your job posting. That way your job gets, higher to the top of the list. So when, caregivers are out there looking for work, they're typing in that caregiver role, and Right at Home is going to be right there at the top. So, they can see your job is clear. And, we want that click rate to go up too, so that people are interested in the role that they're applying for. We want to make sure that you've got, your pay is competitive. You've got a great title. You've got some really great high energy when you're introducing the role, talking about your culture and all the things that you're going to do in your office to really attract that caregiver to come in. So that's really key in setting up success for your office and making sure you can expand your caregiver pool to a
Yes.
lot.
Great, and it's like you can see, because I made a list of questions before
Mhm.
we met today, just kind of some FAQs that people ask, and other
Mhm.
teams, or excuse me, other questions that have come in the past. But this next one has to do with what makes Right at Home stand out when a caregiver is trying to choose between, maybe taking this caregiver role with Right at Home and maybe another home care company, and you've already listed quite a few things there. So
Mhm.
that's great. In addition to that, I had another question.
Mhm.
Before we get to training, I kind of want to cover this caregiver recruitment piece. So when it comes to recruiting caregivers and hiring those caregivers, are there any other things or tips or tricks for our franchise owners when it comes to caregiver recruitment? Other resources that we provide to help franchise owners recruit those caregivers.
Yeah, so going back to the best practices, right? So some of those best practices are really going to be key in making sure that you're reviewing those and, setting your jobs up for success, but going out and looking at what your competitors are doing as well, because we have to make sure that we're in competition, right? We're paying either,
Right.
average or higher than average. We have a really good caregiver experience process and great onboarding when we're
Hmm.
bringing them in, and that's going to be really key too. So there's a lot of different things to look at. Onboarding. So we have different best practices for every piece of that caregiver journey as they come through. Technology is something else that we're really embracing right now, and this is really important, especially as we kind of enter this world of AI. And so our preferred ATS right now is building out some AI, and so we are learning already that this AI is the speed to be bringing people in faster is really helping, and we're seeing an uptick in phone screens. We're seeing an uptick in people that are getting people to come to orientation. So it's exciting what we're able to do. And I know sometimes that's a scary topic, AI, when we're talking about the people side, but when you can have this perfect, marriage between technology and people, it just works together really well. And we're learning a lot about that. And I think it's just going to enhance our processes even more. So.
Yes, I agree, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I was looking at
Mhm.
some of the numbers this morning, and this is kind of in the testing phase, and it's going to
Mhm.
be we will look back on this a year from now and just be like, hey, we were just in the beta testing phase of AI
Mhm.
when it comes to recruitment and the applicant tracking system and how we can incorporate that. Because it's relatively new to us now, but I promise you a year or so from now, it's going to be like, yeah, that's a standard thing now. But
Right.
always looking for ways that artificial intelligence can help our franchise owners run their operations in a more efficient way, and that's one of many. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so
Mhm.
let's try to cover as many of these caregiver best practices as we can. We've already
Mhm.
talked a lot about hiring, caregiver recruitment. You did mention onboarding. So if you could
Mhm.
maybe just kind of describe what a caregiver onboarding experience looks like. And I know it's going to be tough because we do a lot. If you can just kind of describe some of the tools and the resources that Right at Home provides to help our franchise owners properly onboard the caregivers that they've just hired.
Yeah, onboarding is so critical, Jen. And I think that is one of the things that we really emphasize, starting with orientation, right? That orientation is that first day. Caregivers are starting work, right? They're just getting a feel, a taste for your culture, for the environment that they're going to be working in, and all of the things that we go through in orientation. But it's beyond orientation that we need to continue to engage. And so, what our best practice really tells us is that there's so much engagement that should be happening between the office and that caregiver. We have touch points built in where we want to connect with our caregivers to understand what's working, what's not working. We got touch points built in before that first shift happens to make sure, that warm handoff is happening, successfully, as well as after that first shift and just checking in and making sure everything went okay. Because a lot of times I think that offices who don't properly check in after that shift, the caregivers disappeared and they don't show back up because something happened or we haven't learned something that went wrong. And so just again, those personal connections and understanding, where your caregivers are in the process is going to be huge. So onboarding is about a 90-day process in total. We've also learned that if you can keep your caregivers 30 days, you're likely to keep them 60 days. And if you're keeping them 60, you're likely to keep them 90 and so on. So that percentage continues to rise as you keep them longer and longer.
Okay. So an FAQ that we get quite often is, hey, how does Right at Home train my caregivers? To which I say, Right at Home doesn't train your caregivers. You, the franchise owner, are the one that trains your caregivers. Maybe not directly like, hey, me, the franchisee, I am going to, properly train you to caregiver. But we, the franchisor, provide all of the tools and resources to our franchise owners so that they can properly train and onboard these caregivers. So let's just talk specifically about training. So how does a caregiver understand how to provide care, that best in class, right at home care that we expect? How is a caregiver properly trained to do so?
Yeah, that's great. So orientation, I think, is key. It's that day one. And so we have a full suite of packages that we actually go through during the best practice. We have a full PowerPoint presentation that you can give, to your caregivers when they come into orientation. And so we would obviously want that office to ensure that everything is aligned with their individual office and what they want to offer. Obviously, you're going to have different payroll companies, you're going to have different expectations, but ultimately the main components are there. So, what they're going to need is, hand washing and all the things that are hands-on training in that first day. That's going to be really important. We want to make sure that we're engaging with them because that's really key too, is that we're constantly, asking them questions and having them engage in the process, not just a talking head at the front of the room, right? Because we want to keep them. And then we also have Activated Insights, which is one of our training platforms that we have that they can actually take training through, and that really helps them get set up for success. A lot of our offices do have where they've got like a hospital bed where they can practice certain techniques, how to use a Hoyer lift, how to, do some functionalities there that they're going to need to do with clients. And that's really key too, is asking what additional hands-on training do you need? As we all know that caregivers come in with different skill sets when they start with us. So we want to make sure we're meeting them where they are.
Okay. And so you've mentioned this a couple times, and I feel the need to really point this out to our listeners. As a Right at Home franchise owner, you think, okay, this is in-home care and assistance, and, obviously you want to make sure that the clients that are receiving services from Right at Home are receiving the absolute best-in-class care, that those clients are fully supported, that the families of those clients are fully supported, and this misconception is that is the main focus. I would argue, yes, that is a focus, but just as important as making sure that those clients that are receiving care, it's that best-in-class care, that you as a franchise owner are also caring for the caregivers that you employ. it's equally as important. I've heard you use the word engagement multiple times with how important it is to stay engaged with your caregivers to make sure that they are properly supported, that you've created a culture in your office where it's a great place to work. And that's going to be one of the questions on my list here for you. But it's so incredibly important, and I can't stress that enough. Is there anything else that you want to add to that, Jessica?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It is incredibly important to maintain that with your caregiver. Having that caregiver first mentality is so huge. And I think that's what really sets our system apart from other agencies and other, home care, is that we do put that caregiver experience at the forefront, whether it's going into a client's home and we're trying to offer the shift, right? We have to think about the caregiver and what shifts are available that we have waiting because they're number one, right? So when you put your caregivers first and you have that mentality, typically your caregivers are going to put your clients first because you're showing them they're number one, they're going to put your clients number one. So it's kind of this trickle down effect, but it really does work. And so it works beautifully for us.
Yes. Okay. So if you could please talk a little bit about, all right, so now that, we've hired the caregivers, we've created this awesome onboarding experience, they're working as a caregiver, how do we keep those caregivers? So let's talk about retention and to have those caregivers stay employed with you. You want your caregiver to stay employed with you as a caregiver for many years to come and create that awesome environment. So let's talk about some of those tools and support that we provide to our franchise owners to help with caregiver retention.
Yeah, that is again key, right? Because again, if we can keep them 90 days, you're typically going to keep them longer. And so that ongoing touch point process, along with having some sort of engagement process in place, whether you're using a tool, a platform like we partner with Caribou, who is a great partner of ours, and where it's kind of more along the lines of gamification, where a caregiver does a really great thing, they get a kudos from a client, or they hit an anniversary or a birthday, we can acknowledge them through points. And so caregivers can then take those points and they can redeem them for various gift cards. So it's a really cool thing. And actually, we've heard caregivers like the points more than they do just handing over a gift card. They just think that's really cool that they're earning something and they can build it, right? So we're learning that, and it's a really cool process. So we encourage all of our offices to either have a process where you're engaging caregivers, building that personal relationship, either one-on-one or on your own, keeping tags through WellSky, through our operations system, to remind yourself when have you talked to this caregiver last? When is it up again? Or having an engagement tool like Caribou as a platform of choice.
Okay, so that being said, I don't know that I've ever spoken to somebody who wants to join Right at Home and they say, you know what, once I join Right at Home, I just want to be average and I want to do the bare minimum. I feel like everybody who joins the Right at Home system, they're like, I'm so excited, let's go, I want to grow, and build this amazing business. So from your point of view, from your standpoint and your role in what you do, how does getting caregiver hiring and retention right impact a franchise owner's growth or lack thereof?
Oh my gosh, it's huge. I mean, the caregiver is equally as important as your clients. It's kind of, again, you can't have one without the other. So if you're not bringing them in, quickly, so like speed is the game, right? Keeping them through the process fast, they're going to go to your competitor. So it's just going to be down the street, to ABC Home Care, right? So bringing them through quickly and just making sure that you're putting that caregiver first. Focusing on your caregivers, again, just as much as you are your clients is so incredibly important for you to be successful. So.
Yes, and I like the caregivers are the heartbeat of our business. I describe it as so you can have, great margins and, your bill rates are perfect. Everything is just perfect. But if you don't have caregivers that you're constantly recruiting and retaining, everything else is going to be impacted and not in a great way. So I agree with you. It's incredibly important to just general growth. Without that, it's difficult to do. So making sure that it is a main focus of or a KPI that you're constantly watching when you become a Right at Home franchise owner. So speaking of, and I mentioned this earlier,
Mhm.
um, I would like you to describe to our listeners what a great place to work means for right at home, and how that impacts caregiver recruitment, and maybe that how that has right at home stand out above others when it comes to a great place to work.
Yeah, this is great. I love this question because we are a great place to work. We are certified under the Great Place to Work certification process.
Mm-hmm.
So this year was our third year in a row. So what that
Oh,
means is for offices who participate in this process, they will be able to get the badge. So the Great Place to Work badge is put on their website. And so all these caregivers that are interested in working and they happen to land on your website, they'll see that you're a great place to work. And we've heard from several franchisees when they go through that interview process, that's why they applied, is they saw that they were a great place to work. So they're like, oh my gosh, you're a great place to work. This is awesome. I want to work for your agency. And
mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of home care agencies that have that certification.
Mm-hmm.
So it does help recruit. We've heard it anecdotally. We've seen it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of referrals that are coming in, I think, with the Great Place to Work as well as Caribou, right?
Yep.
But also, our team also does another add-on bonus for those that are participating in the Great Place to Work survey. We do culture success plans. And so just as good as having that badge out on your website and for people to see, we also want you to focus on the survey results to see what can you do in your office to really improve and
Mm-hmm.
help move your movable middle. We call it the movable middle, areas that you could be working on to improve your business strategy and around caregivers and making them happy. So we're working with a lot of offices. We're going to be actually launching, this is our second year in a row doing the culture success plans, and we're really excited to kick this off actually next Tuesday in our system. So
Yes.
yeah.
So just for my own knowledge and for our listeners, let's just pretend I'm a right at home franchise owner and I took the Great Place to Work survey and I got word like, yes, I'm Great Place to Work certified. So walk through like, so what is this, what do people fill out and how do I become a great place to work? Like what kind of results do you need to see on this report in order to be certified as a great place to work?
Yeah, so you have to opt in. So there is an opt-in form, and we do launch this typically right around the February, March time frame. So
Yep.
once you opt in, then we send out a survey. Great Place to Work, actually. We don't, but we, as in the
Yep.
system, right? We'll send out a survey to all of your caregivers, and then they have about 3 weeks to take the survey. Once they
Okay.
complete that survey, they have to get at least 50% participation.
Okay.
And once they get that 50%, all the results come back, and then they are given all of the data about where they are in terms of great place to work. But we certify actually as a whole. So
Hmm.
we
Great.
all are kind of in this together. Like if your peer next door, does a really great job, everyone can do a
Yes.
great job too. So this is like a holistic process.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just for total clarity,
Hmm.
actual caregivers are taking the survey saying, I am employed with Right at Home, and this is a
Hmm.
really awesome place to work. Like, I'm putting my stamp on this, that
Yes.
I'm a caregiver and I work for Right at Home, and this place
Yes.
is pretty sweet. So this is an official platform that says, like, yeah, we are verifying you are a pretty sweet place to work. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
yes.
And so we only survey caregivers that have worked when the survey goes out within 30 days. They have to have like a shift that they've worked. So we're not just, sending out surveys to people who are not on,
Hmm.
on the rosters. They're just kind of sitting there. But we do send it to people who have actually worked a shift. So they're your active caregivers who are working for you. Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. So I was talking about this earlier this morning about the voice of our franchise owners. Like we're constantly
Hmm.
listening to our franchise owners, what they
Hmm.
want, what they need, great ideas. So
Yeah.
can you give maybe just one or two, if you can think of examples of our franchise owners speaking up and saying, "Hey, Jessica, this is an issue that we're having when it comes to caregivers. Um, can you help put together a program or some type of a resource or something to help me with this issue?" So how often are you listening to our system and the challenges that they're facing and then turning that into a solution or a resource or something to help them with that issue. Can you give a couple examples of that?
Absolutely. Yes. We take this very seriously because obviously our franchise owners are our customers as well. So
Uh-huh.
we want to make sure that their voice is being heard. And so I think one of the biggest areas in that is our strategic leadership council. So we actually have a caregiver task force of owners that we meet with every month. And so all of our initiatives, all of our strategies that we're putting together, we are talking to them about that and asking questions. And how do you think this is going to work? How do you think that this is going to, go over within our network? And so we try to get them involved in everything that we're doing, which is really cool. And I think it just helps. Again, they help get the word out when new things are coming, and they also give advice on what they think will work and what won't work. So that's one of the big things. And then we do utilize our coaching, our business performance coaches, because they're kind of that first line in understanding what's happening in the offices. So we meet with them too, and get their advice. How do you think that this is going to go over? Because they're kind of that first line too. So
Yes.
everything is equally important. So
Yes. Yes. And I'm so glad you brought that up. It's like you were in my brain. I was hoping you would say that because the Strategic Leadership Council, the SLC, it's made up of existing franchise owners that have been, elected or appointed to be part of our SLC.
yeah.
Within the SLC, there's multiple task forces. So the one that you mentioned is the Caregiver Task Force. There's others such as Communication Technology, Operations Task Force, but specifically, it's a few of the SLC members that get together on this Caregiver Task Force and meet with Jessica and others on the People Strategy team to say, hey, here are the burning issues. This is what the system is saying. Can you help us with this new program? Can you help us with this challenge? And it's ongoing, regular communication. So it's not like one franchise owner shoots an email to Jessica and says, hey, I want this. And Jessica says, okay, let's make that happen. This is multiple franchise owners coming together saying, here's, our top list of issues. We need your help. Can you help us? And that's quite literally what you do.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
You got it.
Awesome. You know what? Time flies when you are having fun. We only have a few minutes left, and I have a ton more questions that I could ask you. I'll save those for next time. But Jessica, is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you would like to bring up to our listeners? And if you don't have, if it's longer than 3 minutes, just save it until next time. But anything you can think of that we didn't address today that you'd like our audience to know?
Yeah, I would just say, if you do come into the system, we would love to have you focusing on caregiver. It is kind of the number one thing, like that our team can help support you and, nominate a Caregiver of the Year recipient. Our team is also a part of that process. I mean, we are doing so many things this year. We're adding a leadership program to enhance our caregiver experience. And so there's just so many things I get excited about, Jen, thinking about. And helping our owners just be successful. So just wishing them all the best. And, if you're interested in the people business, this is the one because it's just incredibly, it's personal, and it's cool to see this, our business help these people stay at home, but also employ these amazing people. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate you, and I know that our listeners do as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Until next time. Goodbye.